Okay, so first let's discuss identity and access management. Now, this is a slide from the previous presentation, but we need to go over it again just so you're very clear about what IAM is used for. So as I said, the root account is the one that you get created when you open up your AWS account. And we recommend that you never use that for anything except for the first day. And on the first day, what you do is you create a regular IAM user for yourself. Now, the reason why we say that is because the root account is just like root privileges on a server, right? You don't want people to be logging in as root all the time or giving people your root password because you can't really control the permissions. With an IAM user, you could give yourself lots of permissions, but you could also freely delete that account or limit the permissions any way that you need to. So IAM users, they have limited permissions, and that can be limited to whatever you want or opened up as broad as you want them to be. But they're adjustable, whereas a root account, the master account, cannot be. So it's very, very dangerous. So we say, don't ever use it. Okay, just so you can create an IAM user for yourself, then log out of the root account and then log in as the IAM user. Now, your user and every other user that you create in IAM is going to have an associated permissions policy. The policy details exactly what services and what operations on those services the user is going to be able to perform. So this is how you can control it. Now, this is how you're going to be able to use a principle of least privilege, which is a common thing known in security, whereas basically you don't give people more permissions than they actually need. And if you want to be secure in the cloud, you have to follow the principle of least privilege. Okay, so IAM users is one of the types of entities that you create in an IAM, and they're basically mapped to people. It's never a good practice to create an IAM user and then let many people use it. For example, you don't want to create one called developer and then give all 50 developers the same username and password. The reason why that's bad practice is because we log all of the interactions with AWS in something called CloudTrail. And if we look in the log file and every user that makes a request is developer, we don't really know who did what, right? So we need to be able to trace back for auditing purposes who did what. So you don't want to create a user and share it. You want everybody to have their own individual IAM user. Now, there's no charge for IAM, so there's no reason to conserve and have everybody share, okay? Instead, give everybody their own user account and create a password for them that's unique to that. As I mentioned in the previous class, you can enable MFA. So besides a username and password, you could also require that users have the multi-factor authentication device in their hands. So they have to have Google Authenticator or one of those keychain devices that have another code on it they have to use as well. Okay, now, yes, go ahead.
This is Sujit and Megha. A quick question. Is this the second session because you said the previous class?
Yeah, there was a previous class, AWS Immersion, and it's just kind of it's not a hard prerequisite, it's a soft prerequisite for this. So with the stuff that I'm going to go over really fast at this course, you might want to go back and listen to that one. It's called the AWS Immersion Primer. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, okay, so as I was saying, okay, so besides the password, which lets people log into the console, users also get something known as access keys. And access keys are used for the SDKs when you're developing software. They're used for the command line to be able to do commands from the command line. And they're used for making API calls in general. As a matter of fact, every AWS API call needs to be signed with a set of access keys. And so you'll generate these for each user that needs them, and you'll send a separate set to each particular user. Now, you may have lots of users who are going to pretty much have the same privileges. For example, our developers pretty much are all going to have the same privileges. So if we have 50 developers in our company, we don't want to have to manage the permissions policies for 50 different developers. So IAM created something called groups, which allows you to create a group called developers, associate a permissions policy at the group level, and then just add users to the groups. Then you don't have to have 50 different permissions policies, but just one. In addition to groups, there's also something called roles. Now, roles I'm going to show you in detail because I'm going to demonstrate that. But basically, roles are for non-entities. They're for services, they're for EC2 instances, virtual machines, so that applications that are running in them can access other AWS services. And we'll talk about those in a lot of detail coming up.